The big news of the week, obviously, was the Fed, both in what it did and what Chair Powell said it was doing. And I guess my basic question is, do you think that they really have made a turn toward really regaining their credibility when it comes to inflation?
This is certainly the most dramatic action they've taken. Both the fact of a 75 basis point move and what was clearly a calling of an audible just before the play at the meeting. And I think that was welcome and appropriate. I still think that the Fed and most market participants are underestimating the gravity of our situation. The Fed moved its forecast by an epic amount, both up on inflation and down on the economy. But their current view that they're going to get to 2.5% inflation or below, with unemployment just above 4, strikes me as an optimistic tail outcome, not a central tendency in a forecast. I think a better judgment is that there's no reduction to normality without a significant increase in unemployment of perhaps 2 percentage points or more at some point down the road. And that's why I think there's a significant chance that we're going to find ourselves in a stagflationary situation where inflation comes down, but not all the way to desired levels, and the economy is much weaker than anything that's contemplated in the Fed's forecast. After all, we have an overheated economy right now as measured by tightness in the labor market, or at least we did a month ago, and I think we got to get back to normal. And then if we're going to see substantial disinflation, there's likely to have to be a period that is well below normal.
Larry, I think that most of the market participants took Chair Powell as saying this week, I don't want a recession. I hope we can avoid it. But if it takes that to get inflation under control, I'm willing to tolerate a recession. You and I have talked on this program before about that likelihood of recession. I must say the survey of economists is moving your direction, particularly on next year. I'm not asking whether it's likely, but in fact, is it the only way really to get inflation under control?
Look, there's so many surprise outcomes in economics that one should never say anything with certainty. But I would be very, very surprised if we saw inflation come down to 2.5% without also having seen a recession. I think it is much more likely that we will see a recession, but that we will not see inflation come all the way down to 2.5%. And that's why I think the central tendency is towards stagflation. And I don't think the recession that Chair Powell says he's willing to tolerate is necessarily a large enough recession to do what will be necessary with respect to inflation. And that's why I think there remains very substantial ambiguity in the situation, especially also, and I think Chair Powell was right to emphasize this, in light of all the uncertainties that exist in energy markets, exist in commodity markets. I think the story that more people are going to be paying attention to a month from now, but are only beginning to pay close attention to, is what's happening in Iran and the potential geopolitical uncertainty that that's going to generate, which I suspect will feed through into energy markets. So we have a lot of possibilities that are ahead of us from here.
And Chair Powell addressed some of that actually in his news conference, where he essentially said some of this is outside our controls. Things like the war in Ukraine, things like supply chain out of China, the commodities prices are outside of our control. What do you do as a central banker when what you have control over is basically monetary policy, and a fair amount of what might drive the economy is not monetary? It's really something that's larger than you.
Look, I think what you always have to do in any kind of policy making is play the cards that you are dealt. And I don't think that the Fed is being dealt very good cards right now, given COVID, given the various uncertainties that you mentioned, David. They're likely to confront a set of very difficult choices. That's why I think the confidence that a soft landing is attainable here has been misguided for months. It's not that we don't all want it. It's not that we're not all going to try our best to get it, but it may just not be attainable from here. And if it's not, they're going to be implicitly or explicitly choices made about in what kinds of ways we're going to fall short. And that's why there is substantial uncertainty in markets right now. And my guess is there's going to be substantial uncertainty for some time to come. But certainly it looks like there's a much wider consensus than there was 2 months ago that the broad pattern of history, where when you have very low unemployment and high inflation, recession follows, and we're not going to be able to defy that rule, that view seems to be becoming much more conventional wisdom.
Larry, we've been talking about the Federal Reserve and monetary policy. What about over on the executive branch side? We hear some talk out of President Biden and some of his colleagues in the executive branch that we need to more directly intervene in the economy, particularly when it comes to energy. We've talked a lot about excess profits of the oil companies, maybe about curtailing some of the exports in oil. Is that at least some part of what needs to be done?
Gosh, David, I think they did the right thing with their Strategic Petroleum Reserve release. I think they need to be thinking about Strategic Petroleum Reserve policy on an ongoing basis. Can we do more? Can we add refined products? Can we strengthen international collaboration? Can we make use of forward markets? I think that's a fruitful area for policy work. But with respect to excess profits taxes, with respect to bans on trade in oil or export of oil, I think we need to be extremely careful. It would be very easy to be counterproductive and to disincentivize new drilling activity and new refining activity in those ways. It would be very difficult at a moment where the Russians are limiting the flow of fossil fuels to Europe, for us to make a lot of difficulty by also limiting the flow of fossil fuels, particularly natural gas, to Europe. That's an area where I think the rhetoric may have been moving rather ahead of the careful and rigorous thinking. So I'm certainly not yet persuaded that those policies have merit.